Welcome. Today we're going to install the MediaStack project onto a Windows 11 Pro computer using the Windows Subsystem for Linux, or WSL. And we're going to use Docker in a Ubuntu Linux distribution. And we're also going to use an application to do a service wrapper around WSL, around Windows Subsystem, to ensure that Ubuntu starts and runs when the computer reboots before users log in, because WSL does not start and does not operate as a daemon. So that means that when you start up your computer in Windows, the Ubuntu system will not run unless you log in and open up Ubuntu. So we're going to put a service wrapper around that so that Ubuntu runs as soon as the computer is ready and has restarted, so that your MediaStack can run 24/7 without you actually being logged in. So what is Docker and why are we using it? So similar to virtual machines where we have a computer using a hypervisor and being installed and running inside another computer and sharing the resources, instead of the overhead of a whole operating system, Docker virtualizes the applications only. So it doesn't worry about another operating system. Docker sort of becomes the connection between your metal, or i.e. your computer parts, and your system resources, the underlying operating system, which we're going to use today for Windows 11, and then it will use that virtualization of those services and host the applications inside Docker. This is pretty good because what that means is we can use Docker on Linux, we can use Docker on Windows, we can use Docker on Mac, and the applications, the Docker applications that we download and deploy, will be pretty much the same, and they'll work the same, and Docker will handle all the communication between the application and the underlying resources. So MediaStack. MediaStack was put together as a quick way to get a MediaStack up and running just by using Docker, and because it was a lot of people found Docker quite difficult, we've made it quite simple for people to get their system deployed and up and running. MediaStack chooses a certain type or a certain set of applications that are commonly used in many MediaStacks. For example, Jellyfin, there's Plex, and there's also Prowler, Radarr, and Sonarr, and all the other applications that people normally have in their MediaStack. And additionally, we use Gluetun, which provides a VPN and secures a network connection. So what we're going to do is we're going to install the full VPN network stack today. So we're going to deploy our whole stack, our whole MediaStack, including the applications. We're going to host those inside our Docker, and we're going to hide them behind Gluetun. And Gluetun is going to create a secure VPN connection out through our network and out to the internet to an anchor point somewhere. We'll probably try for Europe. And what we'll do is all of the communication that originates from these Docker containers will filter through Gluetun, and they'll be secured and provide your level of privacy as they communicate out to the internet and back again. All right, so let's get into the installation. So I have done up a guide here, which I'll make available, has all the commands that will be needed for you to do this installation. There's quite a fair bit of work, it's quite difficult, so I thought I'd best have all the steps here. And what we do need to do is the very first step is we need to open up a command prompt as the administrator. So we need a privileged command prompt. And we'll just put this over here out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run these commands over here on the right hand side, and we're going to set up our prerequisites. So if we go down to services, everyone knows that the Windows features, where we turn features on and off. So everyone knows this. You can turn Hyper-V on and you can turn different systems on. What we're going to do is we're just going to run the commands over here to do these, but the reason we run them over here, it just makes it easy. We know exactly what we're doing in case someone clicks the wrong thing or they get the wrong subcomponents, because some of them have steps underneath them or trees and branches. So it's a bit difficult to make sure that we have the right one, and we just want to make this easy for everyone. So what we're going to do is we are going to firstly enable 3 of the Windows features. One of them is the Windows Linux subsystem. So that's the subsystem for Linux, so WSL. And we're going to also enable virtualized machine platform and Hyper-V. That allows us to do the hyperventilization, the hypervising to the WSL. Now, this one here, you'll see these are enabled. This one here is disable. We're going to disable Hyper-V. So that's important that that's actually disabled. So we're going to run those commands, and then we're going to install WSL. We're going to do some updates to it. And there's 2 versions to Windows system subsystem for Linux. So there's version 1 and version 2. We're going to make sure that we're running version 2. So we're going to grab all of this. We're just going to go Control-C. Over here, we're going to go Control-V and paste it in there, and then that's going to run the commands up. And then once it gets to the bottom one, it's going to do a reboot. So it's important that we actually do this reboot after we've installed the Windows subsystem for Linux. It's important that we do this reboot before we install one of the Linux distributions. In this case, it'll be Ubuntu. The reason being is this sets up all of the hypervisor and prerequisites. So we can't just run through all of these and not reboot, because otherwise these won't install properly. In fact, it probably won't even install at all. But it's important that we have the prerequisites done before we install these. So because I just cut and paste those, including the shutdown command, that's going to do a restart, which is the /R, and it's only going to give me 1 second in time. And you'll see it there, it goes bang. So we're going to do a restart. So that's our prerequisite. We're going to let this run and come back when this is finished, and we'll continue on. Thank you. Okay, the computer has now restarted, and we're right to continue on. We'll bring up our guide, and we need to bring up the command prompt again. You'll notice here that Windows subsystem for Linux is now ready. We're not going to open that. We're just going to keep going through. But the items are there. So what we're going to do is bring up the command prompt again, but we want to run that also as administrator once again. And we accept that. We bring that across the left-hand side so we can see what we're doing. All right, the next step is to actually install Ubuntu. So we're going to install Ubuntu over here. We've copied that, and we're pasting that here, and that's going to install Ubuntu. And then when it's finished, it's just going to throw the status out, so we get a bit of an understanding of WSL itself. All right, so we'll let this run, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, so Ubuntu is now installing, and that will be finished. There we go, and it tells us here the status command. WSL status gives us an information that Ubuntu is now installed, and the default version is version 2, so that's correct. We want to make sure that we're running on version 2 and not version 1. So we set this up here to make sure that the version, or the default version, is always going to be 2. So when we install any new distributions or anything like that, they'll always be level 2, which we need for WSL and virtualization. All right, so if we click over here, we'll just come here, and you'll see now that Ubuntu is installed. So we can click on this. Now, the first thing it's going to do, it's going to do a little bit of configuration. It'll take probably about a minute or two, and this is also an old laptop that I'm using. So once this is done, it will ask us to create a username. Now, this is the username that I have in Windows. I'm not very original, so I've just gone for username. However, I recommend you have something like Ubuntu as your username, and you'll need to put a password in. So I also recommend just basic password. We're going to use Ubuntu, and Ubuntu, and in fact Ubuntu is the default password that comes user account and password that comes out in the Linux live distros. So that's keen enough that we just use that again. All right, so we go and have a look at our steps, and we've just set up a username and password. Now, what I strongly recommend, these commands here, run these commands, you just copy and paste them into here. This is just apt just allows you to do updates and install applications. These commands will just clean the cache. It's a brand new system, so the cache should be clean. But then that'll update a list of updatable applications inside Ubuntu, and this will update them, and this will remove remove any applications that are no longer required. So I recommend these 4 steps, but for the sake of the demo, we'll keep going, and you can run those at your will and leisure. So what we're going to do, I'm just not going to run these directly. I want to take you over firstly to Docker. We're going to go to Docker here, and what we've got is we've got the Docker, how to get to we're going to install the Docker engine, and we're going to install the Linux version. So this is the step-by-step guide, and I'll bring this over here, and you'll see here if we go down to uninstall all versions, so what we want to do is uninstall all versions. So if you'll see here, this says for package Docker. So this is what I've done is I've copied this command. So this will remove old versions. I've copied this command over here. So we'll run that. So we'll just run it off the web page. So there, we've pasted that. We'll run it, put the password in, is Ubuntu. Okay, so there's no old version, so that's nice and easy. And then what we want to do is we want to uninstall the Docker engine. It may not actually be there, but we're going to uninstall it. Make sure that we remove everything before we reinstall it. So uninstall Docker engine, and we want to take these commands, paste them in here, and I couldn't find anything, so that's good. And we'll move everything here again. Just run them just to clear everything out and get rid of that, the last lot. All right, bang. Now, those commands are actually over here. So all I've done is I've uninstalled the Docker versions, uninstalled the engine, and now what we're going to go, so they're the split commands. What I'm going to do now is we're going to go up to the official Docker site. So up here, we're going to install using apt repositories. All we're going to do is grab this, copy, and Control V, paste, enter. And that's going to do the installation. That's going to set up the app repositories and pull down the source details and get us ready with the keys, the security keys, so that we can check that. And so then the next thing we'll do is we'll install Docker itself. There we go. So this will install all of the details that we need. There's a question there. Just hit enter, accept the Y, the default. And this will now install Ubuntu onto our Windows computer. Now, there's another little step down here. We're not going to run that step. That step is just to, just download a little application, just to run it, just confirm that the system installed correctly. But we've run this a few times. We know that this works. So we're going to put this over here, and this one we're going to put over this side here. So we've now done all of those steps. So the install Docker, we are now running Docker inside Ubuntu, which is inside Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is inside Windows 11 Pro. So we're getting there. So what we have here is these are a bunch of steps that if you get yourself all mixed up with Docker and your applications and you don't know what you're doing, you can run these steps, and this will stop all running Docker applications, remove them. It will remove all the containers, all the images, volumes, and networks. So if you really get yourself messed up, you can just run these commands. Control-C, over here, Control-V, paste them in. All right. Now, it's going to whinge because we don't have any containers running. We've got no images or anything like that. So just wanted to let you know that you can clean your stuff out like this, but just be cautious. It is quite a destructive command, but we're going to ensure that we maintain persistent data. And what that means is we're going to install our data and our media inside the D drive. That's the Windows. So we're going to use Windows here, but we're also going to use Linux. So one of the things that you may not have seen when we started Ubuntu is this little fella popped up. This is the help guide or the intro guide to the Windows subsystem for Linux. So I highly recommend just having a quick look at this. This is a good one because this shows you over here in PowerShell, it talks about, you know, directories, and over here, this is the Linux directory. So this is what it would look like on Windows, and this is what it would look like in Linux. So you can actually create folders over here, and you'll see them in Linux. And the same, you'll create folders in Linux, and you'll see them in Windows. So this is really good to run the Windows 11 Pro, the Windows subsystem for Linux and Ubuntu, because it's sort of an easy way that new users can still use Windows and be comfortable with that, have Ubuntu running in the back end, and still see the files between all the systems. So have a bit of a read through there. It's not bad. Otherwise, just shut it down. Okay, so we've got to that point. What we're going to do is just set up our folders. So we're going to go back to, where have we got a command prompt? No, we don't. Yeah, what's that one? That one's an admin. All right, so we're going to do this. We're going to create these folders. All right, so we're going to create those. Over here, we're going to Control V, and we're going to go now to the D drive, and we have a look here now. So we've created MediaStack app directory. So here they are. We did a directory of the D drive. There's MediaStack, and there's the two subdirectories. So we can see them there. Now, what we're going to do is come over here and go side by side like you saw in that little demo. Now, in Windows, if we open up Windows here and scroll down the bottom, we've got this little Linux now. How cool is this? Now, we open this up, we've got Ubuntu. So you can see the file system here for your Ubuntu distribution sitting inside the Windows File Explorer. So you can see everything here if you need to. So this allows you to sort of see this. So if I go over here now and we go to Ubuntu and we go to CD mount, so we've got to use // here, mount, and we go D and we hit enter and we do an ls-la. Here's our MediaStack, and we do a ls-rla, MediaStack, and we can now see over on this side that we've got MediaStack like here, and we've got app directory and media. So here they are on the D drive, and here they are on the Linux system. They put them under mount MNT, and there's the D drive, D for D drive. So that's how you sort of see the folders between the two systems. They're mapped. So hopefully that demonstration or discussion should hopefully give you a bit of understanding. What you can do is you can do a bit of a nested view. So you saw before that over here on Linux they're under mount D. So what we could do is probably come over here and go to mount and open up mount, and you'll see here's the C drive. So we're looking here at the C drive here, and the D drive there. But if we open them, the system is smart enough to say, no, you're going to do a recursive loop. So no, you're not allowed to do that. But just to let you know where they are on the Linux file system versus the Windows file system. So that should give you a bit more information. We'll shut that down now. All right. So let's get back on track and have a look at our guide. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start installing MediaStack. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this, we'll go down to download zip file. We're just going to download the whole thing. Now that's going to go into our downloads folder. We're just going to extract that. Extract all, we don't need to see it, we're here. All right, when it extracts all 81 kilobit, you'll see here that we have a few folders. Now what we're going to do, remember that diagram that I showed you before, down here, there's several configurations. We're going to install this one here. Now, I wanted to show you that what we're pulling down, this is the full VPN. So if we deploy these configurations, we're going to get this. And everything is hidden behind Gluetun VPN. Now, if we deploy the minimal VPNs, what we're going to get is we're going to get this other stack down here. This is the minimal one. Now, the only thing that uses the VPN here is qubit torrent. So qubit torrent will come through Gluetun and go out through the secure VPN. All the other traffic will just drop out through your home computer, out to the internet through your ISP, and just drop out in your local area. So that's the difference between the minimum VPN and the full VPN, is depending on how much privacy you want to place on your network traffic. For this demonstration, we're going to go the full VPN. Now, the other difference is between the single and the multiple. The multiple means that we've got a YAML or a configuration file for every single application. And the single just means that we have a single file. See how large it's 34 kilobit. It's quite a large one. We've got all of the applications in a single configuration. This is awesome if you wanted to put this into Portainer and run everything up through a single configuration stack. That's nice and easy. But otherwise, if you're just doing command prompt, and I highly recommend this for new users, if you're new to this, we're just going to use this stack here. All right, I'm just going to get rid of this README. We don't need it, but I'm going to copy everything out of the full VPN multiple. I'm going to copy that, Control-C, and we're on the D drive. So we're going to put them into app data. So paste those there. All right, and just to validate that we have stuff, we're going to go into MediaStack app data, ls-la, and there's our files. Okay, so we've put them here on the D drive, and this is where they are, mount D MediaStack app data. So there you go, you can see them. So we're going to edit the compose file. All right, now the compose file, or sorry, the environment file for this is the one that sort of tells what we've done is we've decided, or we've built this system so that all of the environments, all the common information is in this one file. So you can put secrets in here, you can put IP addresses in here, whatever you need. And then when we deploy the Docker containers, all the information is sucked out of this one environment file and then is pulled into all of these files when we deploy the containers. So it's sort of an easy way of putting common information in here to make sure that all of these other containers, when they're deployed, they're using the same information. So that's quite smart, or, you know, it's common best practice. So we're going to go over here. The first thing we need to do is, this is just the subnet that we are using for Docker. So this is inside Docker. I highly recommend just leaving this as the way it is. Now, this here is your home network. Okay, so most home networks are a 192.168.1.0 or a 10.10.1.1. Normally they're a /24 or a C-class network. And then this is the IP address of the Docker computer. All right, so this is the computer IP address of the Docker host. So this will be our Ubuntu system. All right, so we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to get rid of that. Now, on our system, I know that our system, this is quite unique because you'll see here we are actually running inside a VM. So we're running a VM, and so our computer here is a Windows computer, and inside VMware, we're running another Windows computer, and we're running Linux distributions. It's quite a deep build. It's a nested virtualization. You won't do this. We're only doing this for the purposes of this demonstration, so we can get you a clean video. However, it just means that we've got an odd IP address, and we put that in as 172.19. We want the subnet is 112.0/24. That's a bit odd. And 172.19.112.112. Okay, so this is the network, the subnet that my computer is on, and that's inside Windows System for Linux. Now this one is the IP address. So subnet and the IP address that is running Docker. That's important to understand. It's the address that's running Docker. Okay, so here we're going to get rid of this. This is our folders that we're going to use. Now, back in this guide here, remember we created folders on the D drive. However, what that means is that when I showed you the demo, that actually maps to mount D. So there's the D drive, and because it's Linux, it's under mount. So it means that MediaStack and media. So when you create your folders, I recommend don't put a space between them. And also Linux, be cautious, Linux is case sensitive. So Windows isn't, but Linux is. So what we're going to do is, where's my configuration gone? Over here. So we're just going to cheat. We're going to take the ones that we got out there. Control V. Just get rid of that, bring them back, and I'm going to get rid of that. All right, so we now have set up our media and our data, so we're telling it where our media and our data is. All right, the next thing we're going to do is get the user and group IDs for Ubuntu. So we just come back here and we go ID Ubuntu, because we're just going to run that command, that user. Now, it's come back as user ID is 1000 and GID, group ID, is also 1000. So 1000, 1000. How cool is that? That's normally the default. So we've got 1000, 1000 there. We're going to leave that as it is. We're also going to set up our time zone. So you can put any time zone in here you want. You just got to make sure that you have the right convention that you'll see in Linux or Windows. All right. And then over here, we're going to have our VPN. This is where we set up our VPN. So all these information, we put them into the env file. And then when we deploy it, it'll get sucked into the Gluetun container, okay? It won't update this file. Everything will stay in this env file. It just means that when we deploy, Gluetun will pull information out of the env file to set it up. All right, so we're going to set up NordVPN. And I'm going to put some username and password details in here, but not while you're looking. I'll come back and do that later. And it's safe for me to have an environment file, but I don't want it out on the internet. So again, if you are curious or interested to find more about which providers, go across to this link. They've done a great job over at Gluetun to add a whole heap of different VPNs in there. And if you're uncertain about anything, go over there, have a look at the providers, and it'll give you more information in case you wanted to set your cities, or if you want to set up a Gluetun custom configuration, or if you want to set up WireGuard and you want to set up the VPN endpoints. All of these configurations will get pulled into Gluetun, and all of the information is contained over here. So feel free to go over there, have a bit of a sticky beak if you want something more detailed, and go across and do that. All right, now below that we have all of our ports. Most people understand when you go out to the internet, you're looking at a web server, you're normally on port 80. If you're looking at a secure web server, it's normally 443. So these ports allow us to set up the applications, the Docker applications, when we run them these are the port numbers that we'll connect to them on. So we've put them into this env file to make sure that if we get any clashes, when we load these up, we get some clashes, you can just change them. So if you want to change Jellyfin and run that on a different port, you just select the number you want and then fire it up, and Jellyfin will change ports. Now, we're not going to do that, but that's how simple it is. It's just changing these ports and firing it up. Now, if you're going to go for the reverse proxy and allow connections from outside your internet, we're not going to do that in this demonstration. It's a bit too much. Okay, so we'll close that now. We'll just Control S to save it. We'll close that. And now that we've done that, we'll have a look here. The next steps. These are all on this website, on the GitHub, to tell you how to do things. Like, it's got all the commands. Also very important. We're about to do this next step. But we've just put everything in here. So I just wanted to show you that. So the next thing we want to do is we want to set up our file structure. So this file structure is inside Ubuntu. So you'll remember the folder that we put in there. We put in here, so this is D drive, remember? D MediaStack. But what we're going to do, we're going to see that on Linux Ubuntu as /mnt/d/MediaStack. And inside the container, it'll just be /data media. And all of the containers will have the same set of structure. So it maps between the container, between the Ubuntu file system, and then over here we will have the your Windows 11 file system as well. So it's a little bit complex, but trust us, we'll see how we go. All right, so this is our Linux configuration. All we do is we copy and paste that over here. Now, what we need to do is we just need to adjust the addresses, the folders that we're going to use, and also the user ID and the group ID. Now, we're going to grab that. We've pulled it out of here. We grabbed it over here. We've done the edits that we needed. And then all we're going to do, so make sure that you do the Docker Compose first. And then we're just going to grab this, Control C. We're going to go back to Ubuntu and Control V. Okay, so here's our command. And we're just going to hit Enter and put our password in, Ubuntu, and 3, 2, 1, done. Now, just to prove to you, we're going to go over here, and here we go. We look at all of our folders. All of our folders were just created in Ubuntu, but because it sits on top of our Windows system, we can see all of our folders here. So there we go. There's all the application data, and there's all of the media folders. So application data, media folders. All right, so that's nice and easy to see. Now what we need to do is get ready for Docker. We're going to, oh, no, we're not. We're going to grab, let's go to here. We're going to grab this one, put it over here, and there's a set of commands that we're going to do. So this command, now, key point. The important thing here is we need to be in the app data directory. Whichever directory you use, we're using app data here for our data, but whenever you need to run these commands, the Docker commands, you must be in the same folder where the Docker Compose files are. Otherwise, they won't find it and everything will just fail. So just make sure that we do a ls and we see them there. There's all of our Docker configuration files. We've got to make sure that everything we do is in there. So this command here, this is just a Linux for loop. Oh, Control Z, I did the wrong thing. Control C. So this is a Linux, it's just a for loop. So it just goes for every single YAML file. So reading all the YAML files, it's just going to pull down the Docker image. So that's it. You'll see there, it's going to do a pull. So we're going to go over here, we're going to Control V, and we're going to hit Enter. So like I said, you'll see there, it's just going to go through them alphabetical, go through Authelia, Bazaar, DDNS, and you just download. Now, if you're not going to run some of these applications, you decide you probably don't want to run, say we've got Jellyfin and we've got Plex. If you don't want Plex, then you can just delete Plex. You don't need it. And then over here, you just don't run it. But what this command is now doing is it's pulling down all of the images. So Docker, just like Windows, needs to pull down an image before it can be installed. So you just imagine that this is now pulling down all of the images before we install them. So this will take probably a few minutes. So we might just let this run and we will be back at the end ready to deploy our Docker containers. Okay, so the images have finished downloading. So what we can do is we can do a sudo docker images or image ls for list. And there we go. That's what's been pulled down. So the Plex, Torrent, Radarr, all these files or images have been downloaded, and you can see there the size of the downloads. You probably saw them as they were downloading. And it also tells you when the images were created and the ID. They just get an ID, and also whether they're the latest tag or under development. You can change these in the configuration files. However, they're probably just best left as they are. And most of the applications are under fairly heavy or very much continuous development, which is great. Flare Solver here hasn't had a release in 8 months, but that's okay. It does exactly what it needs. It doesn't need an update. So the images that we're using here are pretty well maintained. So we're just going to do a clear screen there. Now, what we want to do next is we want to start deploying the images and creating containers. Now, in this step, what we need to do is we need to deploy Gluetun as the very first container. And the reason for that is, as I showed you previously back over here, we just go page up a bit, find it. As Gluetun is the main container here, Gluetun actually sets up the network stack. It's a bit hard to see here, but there's an IP address behind there or a subnet range. Gluetun will set up the VPN connection, but also sets up the internal network for all of these other containers. So it is actually important for us to run Gluetun first, because it's got that IP range that we saw in the env file. That sets it up for all the other containers to connect to. So let's go back over here and run the first one. We'll get that, Control C, over to here, Control V, bang. Now, that's firing up the network stack, as we mentioned before. So the network stack was created, and then Gluetun image was deployed to a container, and that container is now running. So what we can do is we can check the logs. So sudo docker logs Gluetun, and you'll see here's the log, the Gluetun log, and look at that. So there we are. There's the IP address there, public IP address. Our Gluetun VPN has created a connection to France. Now, we were going to go, for Paris, we were going to go for Europe. I think France is still part of Europe, not sure these days, but there's the IP address, and we've got a healthy connection there. So our network connection is secure. It's running TLS or VPN, and that's our IP address in France. Everything out that we do on the internet will be seeing that IP address and not your home internet address. So we do a clear on that. So the next thing we want to do, now that we've got our network connection, let's be brave. Control C, Control V, and let's fire up the rest of the stack. So you'll see that you're getting this little warning notice. Don't worry about that. That's perfectly fine. That is just saying that there's these other containers using the same name. What we did was we set these all up as a project, and we named that project MediaStack. So when we go into Portainer, we're going to go into stacks. We're going to see the MediaStack there and all the containers running under that. So we did that for a certain reason. It's going to make it easier for you to manage inside Portainer. All right, so there we go. We're up and running. So what do we want to do next? All right, before we set this up, our Windows service, we're going to make sure that we can access these. So let's go and have a look at where these are the file systems. So in fact, let's have a look at this. So if we go into MediaStack, and these are the folders that we set up. Now, if we have a look in here, there's Portainer. That's all the data for the Portainer application. It deployed inside Ubuntu. It deployed here in the Docker container, but because it's mapped to our file system, we can now see all the data here. So you can see the public-private keys and Gluetun. You'll see here all the servers. So it gives you a list of all the servers. So all of the data here. So if you wanted to do your DDNS, there's your config file. You can add the details in there. You'll have to read up on that. It's not in this demo, but pretty much all of your data is here in app data. So this is why MediaStack is pretty good, because everything for your media goes in here, and then everything for your data, all your files to run, and all of your configuration data for all of the systems are all contained here. All right, so let's close that down. So where we were going to go before a little sidetrack is let's go into downloads. We know the IP address that we're after, but what we want to do is we want to open, see this internal one, right click on that and then edit in Notepad. Now we've got a bunch of links and URLs. What we're going to do first is we're just going to get the IP address for this. So here's our Docker. We're going to get sudo ifconfig, get the IP address. Oh, actually, I know why. We don't have NetTools. All right, so we're going to do sudo apt install NetTools, because to look at our IP address, we need to get the tool. It's not installed by default, so it's probably good here to see this. And we just do an ifconfig, and there's all the IP addresses of the Docker. So these are all the Docker networks, and our IP address is, where are we? This one here. So we should be able to get this. And from Windows, ping it. So there we go. We can ping that IP address. So now that we've got that IP, we want to go over here and we go Control H. And what we want to do is find local host. And then what we want to do is we want to replace it with the IP address. So wherever we've put a local host here, we want to put the IP address of the Docker machine. We go replace. And now that's done. We just want to close that. And then we go Control S and we save it. So now we've got to that step. We want to go to bookmarks and import bookmarks and settings. And we want to import from a HTML file. So we want to import the favorite bookmarks, choose the file. And we just need to go to downloads where we saved it and make sure you get the internal one, the one that we edited. Oh, hang on, did we save it? Control S, just making sure. All right, so we go over here, we get the internal one and we hit open. It's imported, done, and look at this. These are all of the links or the web pages to all of the containers that we just fired up. So we've gone and added all this in here to make life so much easier. We don't need the settings, we'll just close the settings. But if we right click on that group and we say open all in new window, then 25 tabs will get automatically generated. And the good thing about it is there's the guide where you can go to next, and there is Portainer. So Portainer's here. This will fail most likely by the time you get to it, and it's a security feature. Because there's a login, you've got to create a login. If you do not create the user login within, I think, 5 or 10 minutes of starting Portainer, then you have to restart it, or you get this log out page. It's a security feature, so don't worry about it. It just means you've got to restart it. It's just so that if it's exposed to the internet, you don't get bad people finding it. They just it's a bit of a security feature. I think it's not a bad idea, but you just got to be cautious and aware of it. So, okay, so Jellyfin, Plex, all of the applications, you'll see them here. Everything's installed and running. I know about this. And all of the applications. See, you've got the IP. They've all got their icons. Now, when we click back on here, they've all got their icons because they've all connected to their applications. So how cool is that? So there you go. You're all up and running. Now, we're not going to configure the stuff here because it's beyond this video, but what we'll do is we're going to do some more stuff. I'm going to close this down. Now, we've installed it, but the thing with WSL is that it will not run as a service, and it won't run, oh, sorry, WSL does run when you log in, but these applications won't run because we've installed them in Ubuntu, and Ubuntu does not start until you log in, until you open the application. So the problem with running a MediaStack on Windows is the applications don't run all the time if you're using Ubuntu. So there's no service and you can't run it as a system account. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a service wrapper, which is a small program that takes another configuration and runs it as a service for it. So it wraps a program up and it runs it like a service and integrates into services. So if we were to go to this place over here, here we go. So this is the Windows service wrapper. All we do here is just hit F5, go to the home, and what we do is we go to the latest. Go over here to the releases, to the latest, select this one here. There are some alpha releases. Don't do them. Like version 3 is an alpha release. Don't go there. They haven't touched it for a bit. This one's still fine. Version 2, go to latest. And then what we want to do is we want to download this 64-bit. All right, so we click on that, downloads. Then what we do is we don't open it here. Never open anything off the internet. Go to where it's been downloaded. Before you do anything, you right-click on it, and you go show more options, and you always do a scan with your antivirus. Anything that you download like this off the internet, do a scan. Okay, so that's downloaded. Now we want to do a Control-C, and we're going to copy and paste that into this folder. Okay, so here we are. We've got it inside MediaStack, so not inside your configuration data, your persistent data, and not inside your media files, but just inside the collective group. And now what we want to do is these things. So we want to download the service wrapper, which we have done. We've downloaded it and we've copied it into this folder. And now what we're going to do is we're going to rename it WSL monitoring. Control-C, F2, Control-A, V. All right, there we go. We're going to save that. We've got to rename that file to a unique name. This is how this one works. And then what we're going to do is we're going to edit an XML file. Control-C, right-click here, and we go New. We go Text Document, and we go Control-A just to highlight the whole lot. Paste it in there. And, yep, we're going to change it from It was a text to an XML. Yep, we're going to save that. So there we go. We've got 2 files. All right, we've got the exe that we downloaded and we renamed, and then we've got the XML. So we're going to right-click on that, and we're going to edit this one also. Now, over here, we've got the details that we need to add in. Control-C. And over here, Control-V. And now I'm just going to clean up some of that white noise. Now, I'll just break this open for you a little bit more. Okay, so the ID is just a WSL name and description and the executable that we want the service wrapper to run. So program files, Windows Subsystem for Linux. And the argument that we're giving it is distribution Ubuntu. So when it executes, it will run Ubuntu. Okay, and there's timeouts and other little stuff here like Windows event log and all that. Not too much great big deal. But anyway, there we are. Control, I put a 1 in there accidentally. So we go Control S and we save that. And now we're going to go on to our next step. We'll just move that out of the way. And where's a Ubuntu? No, sorry. We want our administrator. Where are you? Over here. All right. So we want to go to MediaStack. Do a directory listing. So there's the WSL monitoring, which is the one we downloaded, the service wrapper. And there's the XML configuration file. All right. So all we're going to do now is, before we do that, is we're going to open up services. Bang. Move this across just so we can see. Now, if we go down the bottom to where W should live, all right, we've got the Windows Subsystem for Linux service, but that's not the actual distribution. It's not the Ubuntu distro. So the service is actually running. And so I just wanted to show you that. So now that we've got that, we come back over here and we do a WSL monitoring. Is it register or install? Install. So what that does now, that has installed the service and it's registered. All right, so what we do now is we just a refresh the services, and there it is. That's our new service. So now we have a service that will run on startup. So before logging in, so as you reboot and it starts back up, this service will run. It will run the Windows subsystem for Linux, and then it will run Ubuntu, and then it will run Docker, and then it will run your containers, which are your MediaStack. So that's how the service wrapper works and maintains persistence, at least for the operations during reboots. All right, so what we want to do is, this will not run in its current state, and the reason being is that it won't run on a system account. This will only run on your user account. And we've got another problem, which we need to fix, is the user account for this one is username. So this is the username for, so if I was to do a check here, user name, it's found it, and there we are, it's username, and the computer on this one is VM, so it's VM/username. So put your username in here, and then here you need to put a password. Now this computer does not yet have a password. I just logged straight in. So I'm putting in a password here. I'm just going to use password. The reason we have to put a username and password in here is the service wrapper won't run WSL on a system account. It will only run on a user account, because then what it does is when this process runs, the Ubuntu process runs, it pulls the environment from this account, and that's where all of our configuration and apps are. So we apply, yep, so that's correct. That means that username is now granted log on as a service. So when we do a reboot, this is the process here that allows the system to run as a service. So your account now runs as a service. And we go save. And the next thing we need to do is make sure that our user account has the same password when it logs in. So let's go have a look over here. Go password. Change password. And where are we? Password. This account or this computer doesn't actually have a password on it, but we're going to add one. In fact, we have to add one. Password. Password. A password. That's very, very bad security, but we have to put a password in, and we go next. Now, this now sets up a password. So when we log into the computer, we have to put a username and password in. So it's set as an account when it logs in, and the service wrapper also runs with that same credential, so it'll pick it up and it should run automatically. So the next thing we do, everything's saved there. All we need to do is do a reboot and see what happens when we come back in. Okay, so the computer has rebooted, and you can see here now that I need to enter a password. So the very strong password gets added, and we are now logged back in. So let's get our guide back up and running. And again, we'll push this over to the side. Now what we do want to do is check services. And let's see what's happening here. So if we scroll all the way down to the end, and there is the WSL monitoring service that we have put in ourselves, and you'll see that it's set to automatic, and it's actually running. And it's running, we just make that a bit bigger, and you can see that it's running with the username that we just logged in. So that's sweet. So just to validate how our apps are running, let's open up the web browser. And we only got one, we only got one browser. So what we do is we open up this one, open all 25, and bang, 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 bang. You can see all of the icons are loading. Okay, so all of the programs are up and running. They're running in the background. So there you go, your system is up and running. And now's a good time to set your password if you haven't already, because you've done a restart. So you can set your password on Portainer. Let's do that. Password. And we never send any of this information back. Go to user account. All right, and here we go. And what we do is we go get started. And this is the local account. And all we have to do is click it. And you'll see here, this is one stack. It says there's a stack because we used that project parameter when we built the containers. And you'll see here, everything's pretty much, you'll see this one's just plain up. We just do a restart on that. And Jellyfin, restart. They should restart automatically. They'll fix themselves up. It's just the first time. But you see here now, everything is in Portainer. So we can see the whole stack here now in Portainer. There's the stack, there's all the containers. We can actually expand that out and see them all. One or two of them are just played up. We can just quickly start them. Reboot this a few times and get it up and running, and you'll find that those will run automatically. These are the images that we downloaded previously, which we had a look at, and then the networks, and there's the MediaStack network that Gluetun creates. Before it sets up the VPN and pushes everything out there. So there we are. Now the big thing here, volumes, there are no volumes. This is because we set up MediaStack to use the volumes here. So these are the volumes. This is where it stores all the data, and this is where it stores all the media. So you can delete all of your containers if you need to. You could just go up here and you could delete them all, and you're not going to lose any media, and you're not going to lose your persistent data. So this is a good thing. You can move your system from one, or move your environment from one computer to another and fire it up without losing any information. You can delete them all, redeploy them, and everything's going to be up and running. So there you go. There's your graphical user that you can have a bit of a look at. We'll shut that down. All right, well, let's get to the last few steps. We have done pretty much most of all this. All right, so I've put some steps in here. This will download all the Docker images and update the running containers. So once a week, fortnight, month, whatever, when there's new updates and you want new updates, this command here does the loop that we did previously. This command just goes through all of the YAML files and pulls them all. Remember that this needs to be run in the app data where all of our YAML files are. So remember that. These just have to be run in there. So it pulls out these YAML and environment files. So if you highlight all of that and throw that into Linux, then that will run and pull down the updates. And then when you do this one will firstly recreate. These ones recreate. So this force recreates them. So using the sudo docker, this one, do the Gluetun first. Gluetun gets done first because it's got to set up the environment. So it does a force recreate. So if a new image comes down and we do a force recreate, that updates your container with the new image. All right, so this one pulls all the images down. This one, firstly, it deploys or recreates the Gluetun one. And then what it does, it goes through all of the others and recreates them except for Gluetun. There's another exclusion here to stop Gluetun running again because you're running it up here. So it just restarts them in order, the Gluetun first, then all the others. So this will pull the images down. This recreates all of the containers and your environment is updated. Do this once a week, once a month, just depends on the updates, if there's any new distributions added or any updates to the containers, pull them down. And your system, because it's all it's set up with the app data and the music, they'll just recreate everything. All right, so that's pretty much it. But one of the key things that you want to be aware of is when you put data in, you're only as good as the data that you put in. So I just want to show you, we have put in, where are you, FileBot. So do yourself a favor. FileBot is a really, really good tool for naming media libraries. So if you've got a media library and you're not really comfortable, or it's in really bad repair, you got files missing or bad naming convention, FileBot is, probably my number one go-to to get all of your media for your music, for your series, for your TV shows. Get this application and it will recreate everything. And then what we've done is, if we go back over here and we have a look at prepare your media library, this one here needs a little bit of work, but these are the FileBot naming presets. So these are the presets. As long as you put these presets in for TV shows, for anime, for music, and then you've got 3D for your music. Oh, sorry, that was movies. But if you put these naming conventions in, they'll process your files and spit them out in a decent order, so that then there's the configuration for this. It tells you how to do it. And then what you do is you go into all of the R stacks and you use these naming conventions for all the media stacks. And you'll see here's the Radarr movie naming convention. So copy that for the movie format, the folder, and again Sonarr for the episodes. Follow these music and your comics and everything here. Just follow the naming conventions, put them in, and off you go. Now inside the containers, these are the folders that each of the containers use. And remember, we showed you the map back here. So we just go down to all the folders and we have a look at the folders, and here they are. So there's the folders there that are inside the containers. and then this is inside the Linux, and then over on the left-hand side, you've got the Windows host, which we went through before. So that, my friends, is pretty much everything to get you up and running with MediaStack on a Windows 11 computer running Windows Subsystem for Linux, using the Ubuntu distribution and a Windows service wrapper for it to run 24/7. I think that should keep a lot of people happy. So enjoy. Peace out.